This week, we're talking about Ruth! Not the candy bar, not the baseball player, but Ruth, the Moabite woman who was Jesus' great
Bible.
great something a lot more great's grandma. At first glance, the book of Ruth is this mushy, gushy, ooey, beautiful, cute love story. So for those of you that don't love love, well, bummer. But the book of Ruth is a love story, and it's also much larger than that.
Sucks that you don't love love.
I know. Yeah, for those of you who don't love love, my heart feels for you. It's kind of sad. This short book is only 4 chapters, but there's a lot in there, so let's dig in. The story of Ruth begins with tragedy and death, and it ends in joy and birth. This story is an example of God's providence. Basically, it's a story of God working through mundane, subtle, simple ways to work through God's purposes, God's redemption. Basically, God is just great. I mean, we already knew that. Let's talk about our main characters. So we have Naomi. We meet Naomi and Ruth in the first chapter of the book of Ruth. Naomi is a widow. Not a window, but a widow. So a window, you guys know what that is. So in the ancient Near East, a widow was super vulnerable and super unprotected. And Naomi is double vulnerable and double unprotected because not only is she a widow, which means she's without a husband, she's without her 2 sons. So she, in a foreign land, she's not with the people of Israel right now. She's in a foreign land. She is double unprotected, double vulnerable. It's just not looking great. All right. So I mentioned Ruth, not the baseball player, not the candy bar, but the Moabite. So Ruth, she's Naomi's daughter-in-law. And Ruth is also a widow, which means she's unprotected. But at least she's in Moab, so she probably has some family. So Naomi tells her 2 daughters-in-law, you guys, you stay in Moab. I'm going to go back to Bethlehem, my hometown. It's going to suck for me, so I don't want you to come with. And Ruth's like, no, I'm going to be loyal to you, Naomi, and I'm going to go with you. And thus begins the rest of the chapters of the book of Ruth. Ultimately, Ruth's loyalty to Naomi is rewarded through God's providence. God works through behind the scenes of the story, which ultimately results in Naomi's bloodline being redeemed through Ruth and this next main character we get, Boaz. Boaz is a farmer and overall pretty good dude. He's what they call a kinsman redeemer. Boaz is someone in the family that can help redeem the line for widows, which Naomi and Ruth were. And long story short, Boaz and Ruth, they get married, and then they get married, and they have this boy named Obed. And Obed was the father of Jesse, who was the father of King David. And then there was a lot of greats in between there. And then we get to Jesus. Whew, genealogy. Wild. So I already spoiled this, but spoiler alert. I cannot say that. Spoiler alert. Okay, that was that. Ruth and Boaz, they get married and are the great somethings of Jesus, which is wild. Ruth, a Moabite, is grafted in. She's put in the story of the people of Israel. Wild. Kind of had a brain fart right there. Ruth is the mother of Obed, who is the father of Jesse, who is the father of King David, which ultimately was the line that Jesus, God incarnate, was. We're in Act 3, the people of Israel, and we're seeing a glimpse forward into Act 4, Jesus. Remember the great story of the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, from Act 1 to Act 5, it is all leading up to Act 4, Jesus, the most climactic moment in human history, when God, who created the heavens and the earth, who created you and me, who created everything in between, when God enters human history, and we get a glimpse of seeing God work through that in the book of Ruth. This simple love story is so much greater than the people in the story. This 4-chapter book is so much greater than the people in it. God works through the mundane and simple ways, and man, it's wild. This book starts in tragedy and death. Ruth and Naomi's husbands, they're dead. So sad. But then the book keeps going and we see God in the background moving through the story, moving through redemption. And ultimately, we see joy and birth as Ruth and Boaz have Obed, who will ultimately lead to the line of Jesus, our Savior. God is a God who is committed to creation. God is committed to the redemptive story of the Bible. God is committed to the great rescue plan for our God is committed to the rescue plan to fix our broken reality. God is committed to all of creation. God is committed to you and to me. God's committed to redemption through every single part of this great story of the Bible. Thank you for watching this week's episode of the BIBLE Is That the Book For Me video series. My name's Delaney. I'm the Student Ministries Director at Monterey Church. Hope you've been enjoying this series. Check out Season 1 if you got lost when I was talking about Acts 1 through 5. But if you've watched those, keep watching Season 2 as we journey through this story of the Bible, this living story together, as we see God work through Genesis all the way to Revelation. Thanks so much, guys. You're awesome. See you next week. That was awesome.